Welcome to the Astrology Star Sisters. Today, my fellow astrologer and colleague with me is Rae Ann Williquette, and we're talking about the nodal shift from into Pisces and Virgo. Welcome, Rae Ann. How are you today?
Hey Liz, I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm glad you could join me, and we're going to get right in and start.
Awesome.
So Rae Ann's an evolutionary astrologer and writer, and her website is cosmic-ray.com. And my website is alightpath.com, and we enjoy hearing from you. So I'm going to let you take it away.
All right. Well, as Liz mentioned, today we're going to be talking about the nodes of the moon moving into the signs of Pisces and Virgo. So as of right now, for one more day, they're still on the Libra and Aries axis. Since we want to be able to speak to all of you at all different levels of understanding of astrology, we're going to start by just sharing a little bit about what the nodes of the moon are. So I found this really great graphic on the Astro Wiki page about the nodal axis, and this kind of helps you to visualize what's happening. The lunar nodes are the two places basically where the plane of the moon's orbit and the plane of the ecliptic intersect. It's an imaginary point. It's not an actual planet, just a point in the sky where they intersect. On the north side, it is the north node at the point of maximum north latitude. And then on the other side, we have the point of maximum south latitude, which is the south node. The nodes take about 18 years and 7 months to complete one revolution through the zodiac. They primarily move retrograde, as opposed to other planets, which do move primarily in forward motion, but sometimes go retrograde. The primary motion of the nodes is retrograde. And they spend about 18 and 19 months in each sign before moving on. There's two different definitions of the nodes. There's a true node and a mean node. So kind of depending on the astrologer's preference, they're going to use one or the other. But basically, the true node is the exact place where the nodes are any given day, and that placement will oscillate. So it can kind of go back and forth in between different degrees, direct and retrograde. And then the mean is the average place of where the nodes are. So just depending on the astrologer, they may use different ones. I primarily prefer the true nodes. That's where they actually are, but that's my personal preference. And so what we're talking about today is the nodes, the true nodes moving into Pisces and Virgo, and that will happen tomorrow. But I believe the mean nodes won't actually move for another couple of weeks. But I just want to call that out so there's some clarity in that regard. And also
Yes.
the nodes will determine the signs in which most eclipses take place. So not all of them. We'll still have one left in Aries after the nodes move on, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so you might be wondering why the nodes are important. In evolutionary astrology, the nodes are really important because they help us on our path of personal growth and evolution. And for the collective, as they're transiting throughout the zodiac, it's going to bring up different themes and different tendencies that we'll see on a collective level. So it's really interesting to look at. And really the nodes are what we've considered to be the meeting of the solar and the lunar principles on the earth plane. And basically, a lot of astrologers think that the north node has the same tendencies as the sun. It's kind of a solar principle, and that the sun is our core, creative urges. It's our journey, where we're headed, our desire to be ourself and fulfill our purpose. Whereas the lunar principle is one of instinct and habitual behavior. It could be behaviors that maybe we inherited from parents or ancestors or even culture. It's sort of our automatic responses, and it's a place where we feel really safe. So when we're talking about the North Node and the solar principle, the North Node is, the way that we want to go. It's the way that we're going to stretch and grow on our journey. Whereas the South Node has this comfort, and it's a way of relating or behaving that is really rooted in what we already know and what's comfortable to us. And actually what's happening with the nodes is they're creating this dynamic within us that creates a tension, allowing us to kind of exert our personality on the earth plane. So it's really an internal process, but illustrated by our natal chart and our nodes, and then the transiting nodes and kind of how they're impacting our chart. So there's lots of areas of opportunity for personal or spiritual growth. It's going to bring attention to our habits that are keeping us stuck in the past or keeping us stuck where we're at. And also they can help us to move into our present life. So where are we now as opposed to where we've been coming from in the past? So something that's really fruitful to do is look back at past nodal transits, especially when maybe the nodes return to where they are in your natal chart, and look at what was going on in your life at that time, because we're all evolving and growing, and we're growing up in a spiral. So while things come back around for us to revisit and heal and create a different response to certain things in our life, they never really quite come back around in the same way, and we're given opportunities to change our response and to approach our life in a different way, a new way that actually moves us forward in a different direction. So if we're living in the present and not just kind of relying on what has come before or habitual responses, then we can continue to learn and grow. And yeah, they're going to activate meaningful experiences in our lives as they transit around our chart. So one of the things I loved when I was looking at some of my favorite books and authors for this talk was looking at, I love Howard Sussbord, as he has some very wonderful books, and in Direction and Destiny in the Birth Chart. This is one of his books that's based on a live lecture that he gave, so it's kind of written in a conversational way. And he's talking in that book about the nodes and how the tension between the nodes really kind of shapes our personal will and our choice, which I loved. So I wanted to just share this quote from this book. And he said, "The tension or conflict suggested by the nodal axis actually helps us to develop the will and to make choices. The will is the mental agency that transforms awareness into action." So like I was just talking about, when we become aware of those tendencies in our lives to just rely on what we've done before, and those situations come back around for us to revisit and react to, then we actually can use our conscious mind to make choices that are different and hopefully lead us somewhere new. Okay, so when we're working with the nodes, there's different ways we can work with them that are more productive, I guess you could say. We're going to be drawn to two different opposing ways of taking action. Like I've already said a couple times, the South Node is going to draw us to our habitual responses that come naturally, but they may no longer be appropriate for our current level of consciousness. And the North Node is going to feel really awkward. It's something we haven't necessarily done before, but we're likely going to be really drawn to that and drawn to that area of life, but maybe not know how to manage it. So, we have this ability to take charge of our life and shape it in the way that we want when we're looking at both opportunities, both choices, both directions. And we have to work on balancing the polarities of the two signs that are involved. So at any time when the nodes are going through the zodiac, they're in two opposite signs. And those signs, well, they do usually have some similarities to one another, are also really opposite, and we need to learn to balance the two to get the most out of it. One of the things that I find to be really helpful is just the act of contemplation. So just thinking about, in your own natal chart or as the nodes are transiting, spending time thinking about that south node energy, the energy of that planet, and the house that you have either your nodes in or the transiting nodes in. Like, where are you over functioning or over relying on, the energy that's coming up there? And how can you take what's good about that and balance it with the energy of the north node? So you may, and I'll try to give some examples of that a little bit later to help you understand what I'm saying there. But either time, if you're focusing on either node or either energy too much, there is an imbalance. So you want to take the gifts of the south node because that's where, those things come inherently to you, but you also want to stretch towards the north node and not completely rely on that. So sitting with that tension can really help you to make conscious choices on how to move forward instead of just, giving in to what's easiest or, relying on old, outdated ways of behaving.
Is this a good time? We have a viewer that made a comment that the natal north node is at the last degree of Virgo, so I'm inches away from my half nodal return.
Exciting. Very exciting. I know one or two of those in my life. Inches away. So close. All right. Well, so we're at the point where we're going to say goodbye to the Aries and Libra nodes. We've had the North Node in Aries since July 7th, 2023. And I was looking back at some of the events that were happening around July 7th, just because I was curious as to what was going on at that ingress. And I thought it was really interesting that we've had a lot of climate events, I guess you could say, in recent years. So it's not necessarily unusual. I wouldn't say it's only the nodes contributing to this, but right around that time in that July, we had there were multiple fires that had broken out, really big fires. There's also, I think Arizona that month had like 30 days of consecutive temperatures over 110 degrees. And then we had 3 days in a row of like the warmest global temperature ever. So it was like record breaking one day after another, right when that happened. And of course, we have the really sad and devastating events happening in California right now as they're on their way out. Not necessarily going to blame that on the nodes, but there is that Mars, that fiery influence ruling the North Node. And that's kind of how we welcomed it in, along with there was, I think, the war with between, I guess you could call it a war between Russia and Ukraine was really heightened at that time. It was right when it was going to start. So we saw a lot of violence. There were some other violent events that I don't really want to talk about, but we could see the influence of Aries coming in there. And so the past 18 months since July of 2023, the focus has been on moving towards the Aries North Node. And you can see the things that happen when people act independently, which is really kind of an Aries thing, pioneering, moving forward, not necessarily taking others into consideration. We've seen the themes of that really strongly. We've also seen, I think personally, at least in my life, I've seen a lot of people reevaluating their relationships and how they are either, prioritizing themselves or not, looking at their potential codependent habits, really trying to think about where have I been too considerate, where have I been relying on others too much or not prioritizing myself to the extent that I should. So that's been really interesting for me as well. Okay. Hold on just
So
one
did something
second.
happen to your video? I don't see you anymore.
Uh-oh. Okay, hold. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Give me just 1 second.
Sure. There
Okay,
you
I'm
go.
back. Sorry about that. Technology, so fun. Okay, so we talked a little bit there about, you know, the Aries North Node and what that's look like, but and also just the North Node in general. But it's going to act like a guide in our chart as it transits our chart and present us with those experiences that encourage us to develop new approaches or attitudes, and ways of responding to the topics related to that house or a planet that's being activated. So, you know, as the North Node connects with any of the planets in your chart by transit, usually those are going to be very strongly highlighted for you, and you're going to probably feel a desire to, you know, embrace the energies, maybe recalibrate or reconsider the way you're using them in your life. And you know, it could be a really meaningful time of development for you. Um, and I just want to say too that it's, you know, the nodes aren't a planet, and I do think they have a different influence than a planet. I think they're giving us an opportunity instead of kind of like a guarantee. It's like you have to follow it. I think the South Node does have more of a pull to it, and it's harder to kind of escape because it's going to feel more natural. I've also found the transiting South Node feels very draining to me, at least personally, when it's hitting my planets. And it's going to be that kind of makes it hard to access the energy of that planet. And it almost feels like a retrograde to me, where you have to reconfigure how you relate to the energy and how you're expressing it. So I want to say it's not like something's going to happen. You have to tap into it. Okay, well, I wanted to share my graphics about Pisces in general. So just sharing some qualities of Pisces. We're going to have so many planets in Pisces here in another like 2 months. So welcome to your daydream. Pisces are generally really dreamy. The energy is creative, it's intuitive, it's, you know, being a hopeless romantic, it's the mystic, the creative genius. Pisces are also, you know, it's a water sign. They're pretty can lead to like some disappearing acts or kind of some slippery type behaviors. They can also go with the flow really easily. So that's something that can be good unless you're in the wrong kind of a flow and you're not kind of facing the responsibilities or the things that you need to do. Pisces energy is just generally, it's kind of otherworldly. It's in a way where you're just tapping into things that, you know, you may not otherwise notice. And so I think even if you don't have planets in Pisces yourself, you know, you can tap into that more and feel that energy as we have the transits through the sign. And there's definitely some higher expressions in terms of Pisces and how it plays out, and lower expressions. So these are some things to look out for. Higher expression is, you know, being selfless. But on the other hand, you don't want to be a martyr. So you want to make sure you're still taking care of yourself, and not just giving up everything for someone else, and expecting them to thank you for it. And there's also a difference between being spiritual and kind of having blind faith. I think I have a note on this later, but I do worry a lot about, you know, misinformation and people just kind of accepting whatever is presented and not really trying to do any fact checking or understanding of the implications of something that sounds good in the moment. You could also be really creative, but at the same time distracted. Like, are you being creative, but you have, you know, things you need to take care of? You should be mindful of that. And sometimes Pisces, people with Pisces placements, they can get a bad rep for being wishy-washy or kind of not really making a stand or taking a decision. And part of that's because they're very adaptable and they may not have a strong preference, but other people, the way that's perceived can be frustrating for them, especially if they want you to make a decision or Not be so wishy-washy, just, know how you feel. And really Pisces is just like, I don't know how I feel until, I'm feeling it, kind of a thing. So watch out for that. And then also imagination, creativity, very strong, but watch out for being just kind of spaced out. Like, did you just have a day to be creative, but you ended up getting lost in a TV show or something like that, and you really could have done something that was more fulfilling to you? It's easy to get carried away. Pisces also has the possibility of really living the dream. They're very creative, dreamy individuals, and we want to make sure, and we'll talk about balancing Pisces and Virgo, but living the dream in your head as an escape from your actual reality is very different than actually putting those dreams into motion. So you want to balance the two of those. Okay, so when the North Node is in Pisces, again, I want to remind you that this energy isn't necessarily easier to tap into. This is what we're going to aspire to. So we are wanting to surrender to a higher power. That's what Pisces is asking. And as we're thinking about transitioning, Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune, and whereas Aries, the direction we've been going, it's been ruled by Mars, which is just very different. It's Mars is action oriented. It's not afraid to battle or to fight for what it wants. And it's really about the personal will and trying to assert that in a way that gets you what you want. Whereas Pisces, the North Node in Pisces, surrendering to that higher power and like feeling like everything's going to work out, and actually, actually believing that is really important, because sometimes when we're trying to assert our own personal will and we're not getting anywhere, that's because maybe there's a better plan and we can actually just have some compassion for ourselves and for others and try to withhold judgment. So those are some things to keep in mind, and that might come easier at times. I think the other interesting thing is, I don't even know what to make of this, but in March, we're going to have, I think, Saturn, Neptune, Mercury, and Venus all conjunct the North Node in Pisces, which means the energy will be there and it'll be easier. But then at points in the year, we're going to have Neptune moving into Aries and Jupiter moving into Cancer. So the two rulers of the North Node are going to be also square, but all their the energy will be shifting, and then there won't be the other planets there on the North Node aside from maybe Saturn to anchor the energy. So this will probably fluctuate, I think, throughout the time as the other inner planets come and go, but we may be feeling this energy really strongly in March. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out.
Me too. So you ready to go to the next slide?
Yep. All right, so transiting South Node will draw us into our behaviors and automatic responses like we've talked about. And it will continue to present us with situations that, we have to take action to get different results and change the way that we've related to other people or ways that we've acted that no longer serve us. When we act unconsciously, when we're not aware of that, we are embodying usually the shadow side of the sign that the South Node is occupying. And as I mentioned before, the activation of natal planets will drain their energy and require us to reassess and rework our expression of that energy. So we want to keep that in mind. And we're looking at Virgo in this case for the South Node. Virgo is, of course, the opposite of Pisces. They have some similarities, but Virgo is really about the pursuit of meaningful work. Acts of service are very important to Virgo. They're honest, they are analytical. There's like the synthesis element to Virgo that's really important. The Virgo energies are also interested in being somewhat being perfect. They like to get things right. They don't really want to stop until things are correct. They notice the little things. They're very efficient. And they like to build on the knowledge of others. So it's very much, going by the book, what's been done before, what can we do, what's possible. Whereas, Pisces kind of on the opposite side, looking for the impossible and what can we do that hasn't been done? What are we dreaming about, no matter how far-fetched it is? Virgo has this beautiful ability to kind of tend the fire, to keep things going, to be the guide that other people need in terms of being the expert. They can help other people along the path. And some of the higher expressions of Virgo are their ability to kind of go within and find peace in the self-knowledge that they've obtained. So, that helps them to feel safe when they feel like they have all the information. Sometimes they may avoid introspection. They just, they don't want to do that work. They want to kind of live in their mind and not think so much about behavior, but they're thinking more about knowledge and what do I know, that kind of thing. And learning to accept that perfection is a moving target is a goal for Virgo. It's easy to get stuck in analysis paralysis in the pursuit of perfection. I know the Virgo people in my life, I'm kind of reminding them very often that, sometimes good enough is good enough. Don't need to spend so much time worrying about that, but they're still going to be critical of themselves. So being like discriminating, as in, kind of judgmental, kind of determining one thing as better than the other, is very common, which can be good. We want to make sure that we're fact-checking information that we receive or things like that, but we don't want to be overly critical of other people or of ourselves because that's really not helpful. And with Virgo, there can be a tendency to seek validation or even create an identity around the service that they provide for others, and you can lose yourself in that service instead of making sure that you're bringing meaning to your life through acts of meaningful service. There's a difference between that and then making it your identity. So that's something to be aware of as well. So Virgo is ruled by Mercury, which is really, of course, Mercury is the fastest moving planet, and, it goes retrograde several times a year. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays into things, especially because that time in March, which the date is escaping me at the moment, but in March we do have Mercury retrograde conjunct the North Node and conjunct Neptune on the North Node. So that will be interesting. A lot of times we could look at, the ruler of the South Node conjunct the North Node as being a really karmic time, or definitely there being times of things coming up that that really have an impact on us. And so Mercury will be on the North Node, I think 3 times, and as well as Venus, because Venus will also be retrograde. So lots of things going on. But with the South Node in Virgo, the tendencies for this, and full disclosure, this is my South Node. I have South Node in Virgo, and this is so real for me. There's a tendency to overly worry or, have anxiety, too much focus on the details, wanting things to be perfect. You can be very harsh or critical and over analytical. So, these mercurial tendencies that are related to Virgo are definitely come up strong with the South Node. And this is, again, natally, it's going to kind of play out differently than in transit. Not everybody will necessarily feel this very strongly, but if you already have anxiety, if you already have these tendencies, I'm sure they're related to other positions in your chart, but you may not know what those are. And if you just have these tendencies, then something to be aware of, that you may want to be prepared for. How are you going to manage anxiety if it does get worse? What are the tactics that you use to navigate those moments? And just be prepared, or consider that it could be a bigger concern coming up. I know that Later on this year too, we will have like Mars conjunct the South Node in Virgo, so that will be a big moment as well. And so especially around Virgo season, I think that happens in closer to the summer, but just kind of tracking, okay, well, what planets are coming up to the South Node? What should we be aware of? Because that's when we're really going to feel those tendencies as well. Okay, so there's some things that I think we should watch out for collectively during these transits. One is martyrdom. Both Virgo and Pisces can have this tendency of martyrdom where, Virgo wants to lose themselves in the service to others and then claim, they did it for the good of all, but no one asked them to do that. Whereas Pisces will also kind of lose themselves in service to others. But that's just, and then kind of refuse to take a direction or think that they are standing on, faith or what they believe in, and that, they're just willing to give up their lives for a cause or something, but, it's not necessarily the right thing to do. And then they feel victimized in some way. So be aware of that. Also, guilt over not doing enough. I think we're gonna feel very strong compassion. I think it's something that we're all probably feeling right now, seeing, I know there's been so much going on in the world already, but just, I think I was going to say this as a metaphor, but I guess it's probably as the dust settles, really, and communities start coming together to recover after these disasters and all of this loss, it can really bring people together in a sense of oneness and understanding that we are all in it together, and we have each other, right? We have to look out for each other, and having compassion is important, but there's a certain point where if you start feeling guilty that you're not doing enough or you don't know how to contribute, that is just not helpful. So you have to know when to kind of give yourself a break and know that you've done what you can. There's just, I think with all this, the planets in Pisces, we may just feel overwhelmed with our amount of compassion, how much we feel, what's going on. And then that could lead to escapism. If you have like tendencies towards addiction or addictive behaviors, just kind of being aware of that, because the world's overwhelming. And I know it's already kind of an issue, but that could be exacerbated in the future. Too much dreaming and not enough planning is definitely could be a Pisces tendency. So I'm actually really excited to see what's going to happen with all these planets in Pisces. I plan to try to, be as imaginative and creative as I can in looking at the future. But you can't just dream. You also have to plan. You have to take concrete steps towards the things that you want. And you also have to, act in the right way. I got to keep that in mind. I also think, trying to fix others could be something that comes up, maybe trying to avert your own attention from yourself and looking towards other people. How can I fix others, or how can I fix this thing? It's sort of a distraction, and also it's not helpful because we really can't fix other people. So they have to worry about that themselves. So, focus on yourself and what you can do. And again, don't feel guilty when you can't do anything else. Overly complicating things. I think Pisces can kind of muddle the water with confusion, and then Virgo can really just overdo it by trying to figure out all the details. So there's kind of two ends of the puzzle there where things aren't clear. And so we don't want to make things more complicated. Try to keep things simple as you can. And then I already mentioned this, but misinformation, it's already running rampant, of course. There's a lot of, this is not a new issue, but I do have concerns that it could get worse, and people are still, just not getting the right information or checking facts, or, going along with reality. So, okay, I wanted to also give us some things, not just to avoid, but what do we want to embrace? What do we want to work towards? And with the Pisces North Node, one of the keys is to go with the flow. Let go of your control, let things play out the way they will. We really don't have control over everything. Although some of us, myself included, like to think that we do and we can control everything. But so this is a daily thing for me, for sure. You can try new spiritual practices. And I think that this will be a really big deal. I think people are really going to be looking for something beyond maybe what they've already been working with in terms of spirituality or faith. And practices like daily meditation and contemplation are going to be helpful because they help reorient us to where we are, right, in the present moment. Helps with anxiety. Being alone or, spending time in solitude, especially in nature, will be really helpful. And part of that is because when we're going to have all this energy in Pisces, especially, there's just the energy will be feeling really strong. And even if you're not normally very sensitive to energy, I imagine you're going to be kind of feeling it. And if you've never had to really work with your energy and having boundaries around other people, or, it can get really hard because you may be feeling things that aren't really coming from you. So if you're spending time in solitude and in meditation and contemplation, you kind of know what are your feelings, how are you actually doing, instead of picking up that from other people. But those of us who are already sensitive and maybe haven't done a good job of this are probably going to learn better energetic hygiene, how to have better energetic boundaries, because there's just so much going on, and you can't walk around in the world just soaking up everybody's energy and expect to like get things done. So there's lots of resources on getting started with those practices. And so if you start feeling kind of bogged down and unsure of where all this is coming from, that might be something to look into. And also just taking a creative approach to your life. I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but as I see, the world continue to kind of fall apart, and I'm like, well, why am I still even worried about these, mundane things? And of course, yes, we have to do certain things to survive at this point, but also why aren't we can dream about the future, or we can think about, how do I want my life to look? What do I want to create in my life, and what steps can I take to get there? So if you have different ways of approaching that you already like I love to collage, so that's probably what I'll be doing. But if there's different things that you like to do to combine your creativity and just to get re-excited about the possibilities for your life, this could be a good time to do that. Okay, so how can we balance the two ends and work with the nodes? Well, we want to find ways so that we can infuse personal meaning. So something that actually matters to us, something that inspires us into our daily work. So that could just be small things, like maybe you start a meditation group at your office or something, and once a month everybody meditates, and that helps to fuel your desire to continue to go to work even though you don't really want to. So finding ways to incorporate maybe spiritual with the mundane, incorporating meaningful acts of service in your routine. Maybe you decide that you're going to volunteer at a homeless shelter once a month or something, or other things. I mean, acts of service can really be anything from just going out of your way to open the door for someone, or pick up garbage on the beach when you're going for your walk. So whatever it is that you can do and incorporate into your routine that helps you feel like you're doing something, no matter how small, it's a good way to balance those two signs. And self-compassion, especially for our imperfections, is really important. You may find yourself getting really self-critical or critical of others, and just being reminded that we're all humans doing our best can go a long way. And ensuring personal boundaries are in place to prevent self-sacrificing tendencies. So if you're the kind of person who already likes to kind of self-sacrifice, do too much, read people's minds, do things for them without them even asking, you're really going to want to make sure that you're aware of that, and you're kind of thinking about that and putting boundaries into place to prevent yourself from overdoing it. It'll be really easy just to kind of keep going along with what somebody else wants. And, if you've already been sacrificing yourself, then without, consciously putting an end to that, then it'll just probably continue. And you'll find yourself more enmeshed with another person or, something that you may not really want to be involved in. And then finally, one of the things to consider would be to embrace more holistic healing, of ourselves. And that helps us to bring our mind, body, and spirit into balance. So if there's new health approaches that you would like to try, that you haven't tried, that help to bring all those things together, then this will be a good time for that. Okay, well, this is really interesting to me. Liz, I don't know if you have noticed this, but I was going to get all of our dates for the eclipses, and in this series, we only have one solar eclipse, which was very interesting to me. I don't know if this is common or not. Maybe this happens more than I realized, but I don't know. Does it, Liz?
Or... Well, it happens because there's the crossover from the sign before. Mm-hmm. So, and I didn't look at it. So, are they crossing over next year too, or later in the year? I didn't look, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing, so we will have a solar eclipse this year in Aries still. So, so we do still have that in April, I think April 9th. And then, there's only one solar eclipse, which would be in September. And then in July of 2026 is when they change. But the one, there will still be a lunar eclipse in Virgo on February 20th, 2027, because it's at 1 degree of Virgo. So I think the rule is, gosh, I can't ever remember if I think it's 13 degrees away for a lunar eclipse.
Well, I think it's about 13. Yeah, approximately 13.
So, so basically, when there's a new moon or a full moon within a certain number of degrees of the nodal axis, that's when it's considered an eclipse, even if we can't see the eclipse happening. So that February 20th one is pretty far away. And we'll have other solar eclipses, but it will go, again, we have the Aries one, and then we'll have the one in Virgo, then we'll have one in Aquarius, and then I think Leo after that. So very interesting. But a lot of lunar eclipses, full moons, happening over the next, I guess, 2 years in Virgo. So and Pisces. So definitely going to have a lot of culminating events in those areas of our charts.
That's very interesting looking, because I always think of lunar eclipses as, looking to our past to heal and grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's no new energy, no new solar eclipse coming into the North Node. So, that's interesting.
You ready to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
That finishes. Well, this is a great presentation. Thank you for sharing. And do you want to leave people with anything to close with at this point? We have a few more slides here, but it's more of just telling what we're doing in the future.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that feels like a really, really big thing, Liz. I think that, right now in the world, there's just so much going on, and just to remember that there's only so much you can do, but all the little things that you do go a long way, and just don't be afraid to give what you can when you can, and have compassion for yourself, and whatever it is that lights you up and makes you excited, try to follow your heart, do the Pisces thing of, following your dreams, but don't forget to back it up with the details and the planning, but also leave room for the universe to surprise you. You just never know when something might come out of nowhere. So those are my words of wisdom.
Well, and I'm calling this surf the waves of change with compassion and grace for yourself and others.
What? Did you just come up with that on the fly? That's good.
No, I said it the other day, so.
Oh, okay. I was like,
not quite on the fly, but kind of.
Okay. Thanks for being honest. I was like, I'm amazed.
Well, and I will be having you back on the show soon. again, and I thank you for joining us today. So
Yeah.
come back for other episodes of the Astrology Star Sisters. And I do monthly episodes with Justin, and he and I do the astrology monthly forecast, the full moon forecast, and a Chiron asteroid series. And the Astrology Star Sisters do a dwarf planet series, planet stationing, decans using astrology and tarot, fixed stars, and Uranian astrology. And I think we're going to add some more to that really soon. And Rae Ann and I both do consultations, have newsletters, and um, I have a YouTube channel, but I don't think Rae Ann does yet.
Nope, not yet.
And then I will be on Talk Cosmos on January 26th at 1 p.m. talking about the Aquarius new moon with I'm on the archetypal symbols team, so you can watch that live here. And again, to get a hold of Rae Ann, her website is cosmic-ray.com, and my website is alightpath.com. And I want to thank you again, Rae, for being here. And I want to thank all of those that have been watching live and all those that come back and watch later. We appreciate your patronage and your support. And so we're going to say goodbye for now, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.